Hey, everybody listening, coming at you with the first episode of the Dueling Banjos Sportscast. My name is Chris.
I'm Josh.
And we're going to give you a little rundown of some of the things happening in the sports world today. First thing off, we'd like to discuss a little bit of the Peyton Manning debacle we got going on here in Denver.
I wouldn't say having the greatest of all time is a debacle, but let's get into that, I guess.
Well, by debacle, I mean we're paying him $15 million this year. He jumped down from 19. So, he took a pay cut and or restructuring to his deal to come in and play one more year. But not everybody's really as on board with it, I think, as that the team would like him to be.
Well, first off, taking $4 million as a pay cut, that's not doing anybody any favors. What is that, another Papa John's commercial? You buy another pizza franchise? I mean, come on. $4 million doesn't get you a whole lot out of there. But the man's the greatest of all time, regardless.
And there's no doubt that I think that he is going to go down as one of the best quarterbacks of all time.
Greatest.
Okay, greatest quarterbacks of all time. I mean, he's got just about every record there is as far as quarterbacks are concerned. But now he's got a new offense to deal with, new coach, new scheme, and his buddy Demaryius Thomas isn't really giving the Broncos the best of times as far as signing a new deal. What do you think is going to come of that?
Demaryius Thomas is one thing. I think there's a lot of Peyton Manning fatigue in the locker room, and I don't blame him. The guy's high energy about football. That's his life. I take more of an issue with the Broncos signing him back or letting Manning come back. Coming out in the media all offseason. Oh, well, yeah, we want Peyton back. Well, I don't know if that's 100% true. So my issues with the team. If you didn't want Peyton back, tell Peyton. I mean, regardless of what I think about him being greatest of all time or one of the best of all time, any of that type of stuff. It's more on the Broncos to say, hey, man, what we're doing here in the future doesn't necessarily involve you and what you want to do with this offense. We're going to be handing the ball off a lot. We're not going to have the weapons we did before. So if that's something you're into trying with us, that's fine. But we all know Peyton's not going to have any of that. And I just think it's more on the Broncos not being up front with them saying, hey, we want to go a different direction. It's time to rebuild. I mean, this is the fourth team that's supposedly going to go all the way and take care of business. So I don't see it being a much better team than it has been the last three.
Well, and with that being said, I'm one of the people who think that it would be awesome if Peyton Manning comes back this year and just gives the best performance of his life. They go to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl. I think it would be a nice, screw you to all the fans who doubted him in Denver, especially. But I do think that there's some problems that he's going to run into. We all know that he doesn't like to come out of games. There's been a lot of talk in Denver about how he's washed up. Also, they think that Brock Osweiler should get a little more playing time. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Peyton's going to want to push it just like he always does, especially this year after he came off of a poor playing experience against Indianapolis. And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with him this year. He might come back with a vengeance, or he might fall on his face, kind of like he did last year.
Let me ask you this. Over and under 3 games, Peyton comes out of the game early. Because either the Broncos have a big lead or maybe they're getting blown out. I don't think that's going to be the case. That's still a powerful offense. Over under 3 games, he actually says, you know what? It's time to get on the bench, get a little rest, get ready for the playoffs.
I think under. If I had to put a number on it, I would say he's probably maybe going to come out 1 game. And the reason I say that is because they do have a much better running game in the aspects of C.J. Anderson and Juwan Thompson coming in there. They both did very well last year, late bloomers in the end of the season. So I think that rather than put Brock Osweiler in just to run the ball, I think they'll keep Peyton Manning in and just have him hand the ball off a bunch of times, and especially if they have a high lead. Now, Gary Kubiak, the new coach, he might have a little bit more say over that, but when it comes down to it, I just don't think Peyton Manning's the kind of guy who's going to come out of these games. He's just too proud.
Right there is why this is anything that happens this season is because of or in spite of John Elway. Let's just be upfront about it. Elway wasn't up front all off season. They didn't want Peyton back. That's kind of a little dirty secret around here. They didn't want Peyton back. They really didn't. Because of what you're saying, he's not going to want to sit down, even when he needs to, when it's the best thing for the team. The man's just not going to take a seat. The other thing is, can Peyton actually not call plays at the line of scrimmage? Is that going to happen? Or is Peyton Manning, every time they want to run the ball, is Peyton going to say, no. Here's what I see on the defense. I'm changing the play up.
Well, I think that there was a dirty secret of they didn't want Peyton Manning back. Well, guess what? I did want Peyton Manning back. I'm not a huge Broncos fan, but I think getting rid of the best quarterback, whoever lived, would be the dumbest thing they ever could have done. Because guess who they have in the background is Brock Osweiler, and he's not that good. So, with that being said, yes, there's gonna be some fine-tuning that has to go along with Peyton Manning, but I think that they can make it happen, and maybe he might give those concessions just like he gave the concession of $4 million so that they would have just a little more money in the bottom line to bring some more players on for the season.
How do you know Brock isn't that good? How do you know Brock isn't that good?
Well, that's
the old man won't take a seat. Osweiler's got 40 snaps. You don't know if he's any good or not. No one knows if he's good or not. It's because the old man won't sit down and do what's best for the team.
All right, I'll give you that. But I also want to give you the person who stands up and does what's best for the team. And switching topics, that's James Harden. That guy has been playing out of his mind lately. And I think that out of the NBA, he should probably get the MVP for the season.
Yeah, that's a cute little thought. First of all, this has nothing against James Harden's beard, because that thing is outstanding. But there's a guy out on the West Coast right now, and that's a guy named Stephen Curry. And you're talking about a guy who's averaging 23.8 points a game. Just been outstanding. We'll talk about, a lot of guys will argue against Steph Curry because he has a better supporting cast. Name the second best player on the Rockets. You can't. There's no supporting cast there. That's fine. So, of course, James Harden's got to do all the work. Fun little story. Every year Michael Jordan won the MVP. It's because he was the best player on the team with the best record. Golden State has got the best record in the league right now. I think just from history, Steph Curry's got to be the MVP.
Well, and you can take it back to people who got the MVP just based off of them having the best record in the league, So probably Steph Curry will get the MVP, but I don't think he deserves it because of what you said. That team has been playing so good all season long, and yeah, that's great. But what about the guys who are actually keeping their teams in the games and maybe giving them a shot to the playoffs when they do not have all those supporting roles? LeBron James, should he get it? You know what? He might be the best player in basketball, but no, I don't think he should get it. Harden, on the other hand, scores 51 points the other night. Are you kidding me? 51 points? That's insane. How can you look at me and say that he shouldn't have, or at least be runner-up to the MVP, and why should Steph Curry get it?
Hey, I'm all about James Harden getting runner-up. I mean, I'm glad you gave that concession because that's probably what's going to happen.
I'm just being a realist. I'm thinking that Steph Curry's probably going to get it because they have the best record in the league. I'm just saying James Harden deserves it. In the 1989 season, Charles Barkley didn't get the MVP. You know what? He didn't get it because his team did not have the best record in the league. Did he deserve it? I'm pretty sure he deserved it, but he didn't get it. So I'm just basing my thoughts on facts and saying that Curry's probably going to get it, but he doesn't deserve it.
You know, the Barkley argument is probably a pretty good one. But here's the deal. The Rockets' model of basketball this season is not sustainable. I mean, you brought up LeBron James. Let's ask LeBron, do you need teammates? Do you need a good supporting cast? Absolutely. And he's won that with pretty good teams around him. He's won the MVP. So I think that argument about having help and all that is kind of thrown out the window when you look at LeBron on those Heat teams on there. Steph Curry is the de facto leader on the best team in the NBA right now. Triple doubles everywhere. It's just crazy. And having a supporting cast doesn't hurt that one bit.
Now let me ask you about this. What are your thoughts on Russell Westbrook?
I think Russell Wilson, yeah, he's a triple threat now, baseball, basketball, and football. Russell Westbrook has done a good job. He's kind of like a mini James Harden right now, little beardless James Harden. You know, he's doing what he can to keep his team in the playoffs, but it's not sustainable. And it's easy to score and have those kind of stats when you got no one else around you and you're playing basketball that cannot win in the playoffs. Ask Tim Duncan about that. Ask the Spurs about that. You know, we're talking about the Spurs bench players everywhere that can score points. It's easy to have MVP caliber stats when you're the only guy that's worth having on the team.
But do you at least agree that some of these guys have stepped up so big in the absence of good players? Kevin Durant goes out. Golden State hasn't had to deal with any of these problems, and they've been playing very well. They have the best record in the NBA, but I think there has to be some sort of concession that these players that shine in the time when they do not have is what gives them the MVP status, rather than someone who's just playing really good for a team that's playing really good.
No, I can definitely see that type of argument. And yeah, I'll give you a little bit that should be in consideration. But what's the MVP about? What is the MVP about? Definition of the MVP in the NBA. What is that?
Well, most valuable player. That's the guy who's playing the best.
The best. On the best team.
But couldn't you say that LeBron James is the best in the game? But I don't think he should get the MVP.
He's not on the best team.
But he's the best player in basketball.
The best player on the best team should win MVP.
But why the best team? They're clearly the best team. That doesn't mean that your player is the best.
Steph Curry runs the offense in Golden State. Steph Curry's the point guard. He's the one calling the plays. He's the one calling the sets. Steve Kerr is a great coach. Good hire by them. But Steph Curry's the one running the offense out on the floor. He's the one distributing the basketball. All those role players on Golden State getting points is because of Steph Curry facilitating the way he does. Steph Curry is the best player on the best team. That's what the MVP is about.
So do you think that Steph Curry is better than LeBron James?
I think when you're talking about being a point guard, Steph Curry is just about as good as you can get. He's not a better player than LeBron. LeBron can play, let's face the facts, LeBron could play all 5 spots on the court. I mean, he really could. Steph Curry is a fantastic point guard. He's a facilitator. That's what you want in a point guard. He can also score. He's kind of like Westbrook in that manner. He facilitate the ball a little bit and score, but Curry does it much better.
Well, last and final thought I'm going to throw in on this is, how can you pass up a guy for MVP who has that awesome of a beard.
You know, it's hard to do, and I've sat awake at nights thinking about why I would betray another man with a beard. But at the end of the day, just look at Steph Curry. Have you seen Golden State play? I know you guys out on the East Coast. It's midnight when those games come on. Steph Curry is electric.
All right. Well, we'll see how the MVP race comes about. You know what? I'm hoping that it's James Harden who gets it, but you know what? If Steph Curry gets it, he definitely deserves it. They've been having a heck of a season, and we'll look forward to seeing how that happens. So, sticking with the basketball theme, we're going to jump right into the Final Four games that we have going on this weekend. We have Michigan State at Duke, and we have Kentucky at Wisconsin. Now, the cool thing is I think that Duke and Kentucky are going to end up being in the national championships game, which is what it shows on my bracket. The downside is the rest of my bracket really didn't do very well, and I'm kind of bummed out about that. Well, let's just face the facts. I don't think I picked a single game right other than the national championship game. How that happened, I have no idea. But with that in mind, let me get Josh over here. Let's see what his thoughts are on the Michigan State versus Duke game.
I love this game. First of all, when we're talking brackets, I'm one of the few guys in the world that had Michigan State in the Final Four. So I'm going to give myself a pat on the back on that, and you can give me some credit off the air later. Maybe buy me supper, whatever it is on there. But I love this game. Tom Izzo, Coach K. We're talking about two different teams with a couple different styles. Coach K kind of adapting to that one-and-done philosophy. He's got a couple big-time players on there that can score, run up and down the court, and get at you that way. A little bit of Kentucky style to it. And then you got Tom Izzo and his Spartans. Izzo doesn't have that real big star player, but everybody contributes. That's old-school basketball, and I think it's going to be great to watch.
You know, I agree. I think, Michigan State is a very good team. They're on kind of a run. They're a 7 seed. You're talking, it'd be really cool if they could upset Duke. Now, the only downside is I do not think that they have what it takes to beat Duke. Duke's just a little bit, they're a little bit too much for them. Only time will tell, but what's your prediction for the score, Michigan State versus Duke?
It depends on what happens. If the Spartans can stop Jamil Okafor from running up and down the court and getting in the lane quick, it's hard to stop Okafor when he's on the move. And if you let him through, you let him get into the paint, on the move, get the ball to him, that's good for two, just about every time. So if Michigan State can stop that, I'd say be a little bit tighter game. I just don't think they have the size or the speed to compete with Duke on that. I'm gonna put it in kind of a route. I'm gonna say Duke is. I'm gonna give Duke 82, and I'll give Michigan State. I'll give Michigan State 69.
That sounds about right. I mean, I would definitely think that, with all said and done, I think Duke's gonna just have a little bit too much for Michigan State. It's a bummer of a story because I really do think it would be nice if Michigan State could upset them, but it's probably not going to happen, and that'll be how the story ends. But
real quick, what's a better championship game? Kentucky and Michigan State or Kentucky and Duke?
Well, it's funny that you say that because if you ask me, I don't think Michigan State wants to play Kentucky in the national championship game because there is something special with this Kentucky team. And just seeing how they've blown out, some of these other teams that they've been playing, I don't think Michigan State has nearly what it takes to even stand up against Kentucky. So they might get embarrassed in that national championship game. So I think it's almost better if it's Duke because that's a little more storied. Duke will have just an easier time against Kentucky to where they're not going to be embarrassed, as it were.
Well, talk Kentucky. There's one more game they have to get through before we get to a title game. So let's not get ahead of ourselves here. What do you got on this Wisconsin game?
Kentucky, Wisconsin, it's a very interesting matchup. You got two number one seeds going against each other. The problem with Wisconsin and Kentucky is that Wisconsin, I just don't think they have the length to make it against Kentucky. Now, they have a good, solid basketball game when it comes to, playing number one seed. The problem is I think Kentucky's just going to wear them down until they just don't have the ability to keep up with them anymore. You've got too many star players. The bench is way too deep, and I think Kentucky's just going to kind of roll over them. Now, I want Wisconsin to win because I would like to see them in the national championship game, but Kentucky's just overmatched. I think they're going to go all the way and be undefeated this year.
I think it's kind of telling when we were talking about Duke, Michigan State. It's kind of telling that we were already saying that game was going to be between the winner of that game and Kentucky. So I don't know if anybody's given much hope to Wisconsin. I'm with you. I'd love to see old Frank the Tank in a title game and kind of watch how that goes down between him and Okafor maybe over at Duke. But, Kentucky's too much. I think you were right on with the bench being too deep at Kentucky. Just too fast, too big. I don't think that's actually be much of a game. I think Kentucky's going to find a way to shut down Frank the Tank. And I know Wisconsin's got some perimeter players that can shoot the ball fairly well. But I think if Kentucky figures out how to shut down Kaminsky, I don't know if this is going to be a close game. I'd even be willing to bet Kentucky's got something to say about that and maybe tries to shut them out in a big way.
Well, and I think that unfortunately, as far as brackets are concerned, like I said, hey, I picked Kentucky and Duke for the national championship game, so that's good for my bracket. The downside is you look at things like Michigan State versus Wisconsin. How cool a game that would be if that was the national championship game. It's not going to happen. Duke, Kentucky, I think that's going to definitely be what you're looking at as far as the national championship game. And also, I think that's the best game that you're going to see for a national championship. It's just going to be more exciting if it's Duke, Kentucky. You know what? If it was Kentucky, Michigan State, you're talking a number one seed against a 7 seed who definitely can't hang with Kentucky. That's going to be a boring route. And Michigan State just doesn't want that to happen. So I think for the best of the best, we're looking at Kentucky Duke.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
All right, so we've been boring you guys with sports talk for a little bit now, so we're going to jump into something just a little more important. We have another Final Four matchup that we'd like you all to help us out with. We've got a few seeded teams in the Sandwich region that we need some help figuring out. Fuck. So, in the number one seed, we have turkey and cheddar sandwich. And we have that going up against the regular bologna and American cheese. Now, that's one of my personal favorites. We won't get into that. But, and in the Eastern Conference, we have the always good peanut butter and jelly sandwich, which is coming in at a number one seed. And coming in at the kind of Cinderella story, the BLT's coming in at the 7th seed. You know what? I think that I'm always going to have to give it to the PB&J no matter what. You throw in some ruffles in the side there, and you got yourself a really darn good lunch. But I also like the BLT. I think that, you know what? It's a little bit of a surprise, a little bit of the outside sandwich. But you know what? It's got a shot.
You know, the BLT kind of reminds me of a Wisconsin team right now. You've got the one star player on the team, and that's Bacon. And I think Bacon is good, but can only get you so far, especially when you're going up against a classic like PB&J. Now, we can argue seeding all day, but I think PB&J is the one thing on there that truly does deserve a number one seed. and we can call it a blue blood of the sandwich family. And we can call it perennial favorite. Maybe people are tired of seeing PB&J win, but it's just a versatile sandwich, man. So many different ways you can do it. I think it's truly deserving of the number 1 seed. And to be honest with you, a scrappy number 7 BLT doesn't take down a classic PB&J at 1.
So with that being said, if we're saying that PB&J is the Kentucky of sandwiches, that probably is going to go undefeated this year, who would you like to see against them in the national championship? Do you have the bologna and American, or do you have the turkey and cheddar?
Chris, I'm kind of a boring guy, but I think sometimes boring is good. And I think a classic matchup between PB&J and bologna and American cheese is what you want to see in the finals. I think turkey and cheddar is a cute little story. I think it's kind of a hippie meat when you're looking at the sandwich family. It's kind of a hippie meat when you're looking at the sandwich family. It's just kind of a cheap bologna and cheese, to be honest with you. I mean,
sometimes more expensive.
And cheddar's a really nice cheese, and I like a little bit of cheddar by itself. Maybe not necessarily on a sandwich. A little cheddar is not bad for you. But I think when you're putting that up against bologna and cheese, there's just only one way to pick on that.
You know what? I agree with you, just like I agreed with you on the brackets that we had for the college basketball. You know what? I mean, there's 2 clear winners here, and there's 2 clear teams that we would like to see in the national championship. We've got bologna and American cheese versus PB&J. And I think we both agree that PB&J is going to run away with the whole thing. I don't see how they're going to lose to bologna and American. Now, I like bologna and American. I like Duke. But I just don't see it happening.
Again, PB&J is just too versatile. You could the classic peanut butter and jelly. I'm a creamy peanut butter, grape jelly kind of guy. Any of you guys who like crunchy peanut butter can bite me. You can also get crazy with the PB&J. And you can leave the PB and you can mix it up with a little bit of honey. Some people like the peanut butter honey and with a little banana on there. It's just versatile. It's good on any type of bread too, and that's the real kicker. Is what do you taste like on the bread? The bread complements the sandwich. It's part of the game. PB&J, there's just too much going on there.
But wouldn't you say that bologna American cheese is a classic? And it's a classic that's just going to keep going because it is good enough, and it is the sandwich that people like to eat. You know, how are you going to combat that?
Look, man, I think bologna and American is a perennial number 1 seed. They're always going to be up there in the brackets. They're always going to get through to the end. But I just don't see it going anywhere when you put it up against PB&J.
So with that being said, we would like you guys to comment and let us know what our brackets are like and how they're doing, and which one do you think is going to win? PB&J, bologna and American, turkey and cheddar, or BLT? Is it going to be a Cinderella story, or is it going to be a number 1 seed that takes it all? So, for the next thing we're going to talk about, we're going to jump right into Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston. It's kind of been a real hot button ticket, you know, as far as the NFL draft is concerned. That's coming up here on April 30th. It's not too far away. Mariota, quarterback for Oregon. Winston, quarterback for Florida State. You know, I'm going to throw this one over to Josh and see what he thinks. I've got a few opinions on it, but I'm just curious as to where he's going to take it.
I think both are kind of a gamble. So when you look at on the field, I don't think there's any doubt that Jameis Winston has the big-time arm, has run the pro-style offense at Florida State. I think that's something you can draft and know he can run an NFL-style offense. That being said, there's all the off-the-field stuff, and I'm a bigger fan of worrying about that than on-the-field stuff. I know when Tebow was here, people gave me a hard time because I kept saying, don't tell a guy he can't do something because he's going to go out and do it. And I think that was proved in the Pittsburgh game. It was proved in that Jets game on Monday Night Football. So I tend to look more on off-the-field stuff, and I think if you're like me, you're looking at Mariota, you're thinking he's a good guy, he's a smart guy, you can teach him how to play the position.
Yeah, but you threw in Tebow there, and Tebow was not a very good quarterback. I mean, he couldn't throw the ball very well. Yes, he won a few games here and there, made it to the postseason, and actually won a postseason game. But do you think that either Winston or Mariota could actually be a franchise quarterback, unlike a Tim Tebow?
Yeah, I think both of them can be. It's just a matter of what you want to gamble as the roadblock to that success being. If you're going to take Winston first in the draft, which I think Tampa Bay is probably more inclined to do, you're deciding that you want his off-the-field stuff to get in the way of him being successful. So it's either having that talent and knowing it might go to waste because of something stupid off of the field, or you go with Mariota, who you know is going to show up, who's going to put in the time, put in the work, is going to be a great guy off the field and represent your team well, but you're signing up for his roadblock possibly being not being able to run a pro-style offense and not being able to do those things that are needed in the NFL to succeed. So you're kind of picking between two different things there, and I think that's why this is such a hot-button issue. Is you got guys on both sides of the fence that would rather have the talent and possibly lose it because of something stupid off the field, or maybe not having that talent to begin with. Maybe it's something you teach a guy later, and all along knowing that he's going to represent your team well.
Well, so if I had to ask you right now, which would you pick? Would you want Mariota or would you want Winston as your quarterback?
Me personally, that depends on my situation. The team around him, there's a lot of talk about Chip Kelly moving up to get Mariota, and that's depending on whether Chip Kelly thinks he can build or maybe he already has a team around him that can.
Well, let's take that out of the equation. If you just had to pick based off of who you thought was going to be better in the NFL, would you pick Mariota or would you pick Winston?
I'd probably pick Winston when it came down to it. The guy has a cannon for an arm, and I think at the end of the day, he gives you. Let's say he's not the future of your franchise. Let's say he gives you 3, 4, maybe 5 good years under center where he's developing, he's getting better, but he's not getting in the way of a team, and you can build a team around him. I think that's probably the way to go. And if he's not everything you want him to be off the field and doesn't represent the team well, maybe within those 3, 4, 5 years, maybe that's when you're looking at upgrading that position. What would your answer to that be?
You know what? I'm going to go with neither. And I know that, it sounds like a cop-out a little bit, but I'm just going to tell you, I don't think the NFL quarterback class has been that good. Look at the quarterbacks that we've had drafted in the last couple years. Just 2 of them off the top of my head would be Russell Wilson and Robert Griffin III. RG3 definitely hasn't had a good run in the NFL. He's been hurt. He just hasn't played very well. Russell Wilson was another one. Now, granted, he's won a Super Bowl, but he's also had a hell of a team around him to help him win a Super Bowl. So, kind of backtracking a little bit, it is possible to win with a draft quarterback who, maybe needs a little polishing, as it were. But I think that if I'm a team and I'm going to draft in the first round, I'm going to go for people who can actually help my team. Maybe an offensive lineman, maybe a linebacker, somebody who's going to be a playmaker, who's going to do a little bit more, who might be able to fit into a role faster than me having to, let's say, deal with Jameis Winston and his off-the-field issues and kind of ease him in to be a quarterback, or Mariota, who's never run a pro-style, quarterbacking scheme, who might basically just fail in the NFL. Look at Johnny Manziel. Thought he was going to be the best thing since sliced bread. He comes back into the NFL and pretty much just fell flat on his face. So if it's me, I'm going to just skip over all the quarterbacks and I'm going to draft the people who I think can actually help my team right now.
There's a lot of pressure every single year on those bottom teams to draft a quarterback, right? Everybody talks about you need to have the right quarterback to succeed. That's the cornerstone of a good team. What's wrong with trying a couple out and having them fail? I mean, if at the end of the day you need a top tier quarterback to win in the NFL, what's wrong with having to get one or two of these guys and have them fail and keep digging for that right guy?
Well, that's not the problem. The problem is if you name some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, especially right now, you have Aaron Rodgers drafted late. You have Tom Brady drafted late. And then you go and you look at the last few quarterbacks who've been drafted number 1 or number 2 or early in the first round, let's say RG3, Russell Wilson, these guys, they aren't very good. So why are you gambling your whole season on these, quarterbacks who aren't doing anything, who are failing when they first come in, which is to be expected? But if you're gonna gamble on somebody, why not gamble on someone who, like a J.J. Watt, who is a playmaker, who does make the plays?
Yeah, and I don't disagree with that at all. I think part of the beauty of the pay scale in the league is you can get a quarterback in the draft and not have to pay him a ton of money right off the bat. So I know there's a lot of pressure to get it right every single time because those draft picks are precious. Like you're saying, if you're wasting a first-round draft pick on a bust, that you could have drafted an all-time great linebacker instead of that quarterback that ended up failing. But to get to where you need to be, I don't think there's anything wrong with drafting that quarterback, putting the time and effort in him. And if he's not ready, if you can never do it, fine. You're digging your way to that quarterback who can do it. So there's a lot of pressure out there to draft the right guy, but I don't see what's the problem with getting it wrong once in a while and finding your way, building a team as you go.
Well, I think the problem is it's not so much once in a while. It just seems that every quarterback who has been drafted early in the last couple of years has not been doing well at all. So why take that chance if that's the trend? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but guys that play in the league will tell you, coaches in the league, analysts will tell you, the quarterback is the most important position. And if you don't have that top-tier quarterback, you can't win. So,
well, how does Russell Wilson keep winning?
I think that's where our two, what we're talking about, what you're talking about, what I'm talking about, kind of mesh together. I don't know if Russell Wilson is that top-tier quarterback. I don't think he is. But he's got a dynamic team around him. Let's say here in a couple of years, as that defense starts to drop off and they start to lose guys, Russell Wilson finally being exposed. Well, on the way, you got a Super Bowl. Maybe they're in there again this year. They got an appearance and a trophy already. Here in a couple of years, who's to say that Russell Wilson doesn't get exposed? And then we're talking about the Seahawks trying to find that quarterback again on there. I don't see what's wrong with that. I think these bottom-tier teams need to gamble a little bit to find that quarterback of the future. You're not going to do it through free agency. No one's going to Cleveland, on their own will. That's not going to happen. So if you're a team like Cleveland, you have to keep looking for that that quarterback draft pick and find the guy that's going to work for you.
Well, and I certainly agree that things like Peyton Manning coming to Denver don't happen very often. You do not see quarterbacks generally, opting into free agency after they've become a superstar. Drew Brees is probably never going to leave New Orleans, even though they've been talking about it for years. He's just not going to leave because he's an elite quarterback for the New Orleans Saints. So, you know what, I do agree that we do need to draft these quarterbacks. But as far as Mariota and Winston are concerned, I'm just not sure that they're going to be the aces of the team that they expect them to be right off the bat.
And time will only tell all that stuff. So, the draft is going to be interesting. It's going to be fun to see who's going one. Again, I think it's Winston. Who do you think Tampa's going with?
Oh, I'm thinking Winston too, based off the pro style.
Yeah, so it'll be fun to see what happens here in the next couple weeks.
You know what else is going to be fun? Is seeing what happens when Tiger Woods is playing at Augusta in the Masters. He has dropped out of the last few tournaments that he's played in, and he hasn't played in weeks and weeks because his back or his swing or, you know what, he just hasn't been playing as Tiger Woods. And everybody keeps asking, what happened to the old Tiger Woods? You know what? I personally hope that he comes back into this majors at Augusta and absolutely crushes everybody, because that would be Tiger Woods. That would bring him back. He's not even in the top 100 rankings. And that's the first time since 1996 or 97, one of the 2 years, where he hasn't been in the top 100 golfers in the world. So I would like to see Tiger Woods come back and just absolutely crush everybody. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's probably going to have the same problems that he's been having and probably not even make the cut. But it would be nice to see him tell everybody, screw you, I got this game.
Yeah, it's, I'm with you, but it's a little bit of wish in one hand, crap in the other, see which fills up first. I think people asking what happened to Tiger Woods, this is Tiger Woods. Probably for the rest of his career, sadly enough. I think that swing he had early in his career absolutely destroyed his body. I know there's a lot of rumors and stuff about him maybe being involved with steroids and kind of questionable stuff with that. And I think that over time wrecks your body too. So I think a combination of that has really made Tiger Woods into the golfer he is today, sadly enough. We're used to seeing greatness out of him. I just don't think it's there anymore. And I think this is the Tiger that we're going to have to get used to seeing, one that other players don't fear, a guy that's just followed by the media because he is Tiger Woods, and we all like to see that car wreck on the interstate, and that's basically what Tiger Woods is right now. The one thing I do wish for Tiger Woods is that if you are not ready to come back, don't do it. It gets old watching you enter tournaments, and then when you start to fall off the wagon, you're falling behind the pace, you start to claim injury. And maybe he is really hurt, but I think it's getting kind of embarrassing watching him withdraw out of all these tournaments, just because I think he's forcing himself more than anything. And to what you're saying, it'd be nice to see him back, and it'd be nice for him to say, hey, you know what, I am Tiger Woods, I should be feared. I think that's driving him, and I think it's hurting him a little bit more than it is anything else.
Well, and with that being said, I think that this should be a pretty good Masters. I mean, you've got people like Rory McIlroy, who's been pretty much dominant everywhere he's been. I just don't think Tiger has it to come back at this point in his career with all the things that have happened. What are your thoughts on the game and how it's going to move from here after Tiger Woods?
I think losing Tiger Woods is a big deal for golf, because there's a whole generation of kids that play the game just based off him. But I think there's a lot of new, young, up-and-comers that are going to be the face of the game. I don't think it's going to be one guy like it was with Tiger, and maybe towards the end there, Tiger and Phil dueling all the time. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. I think you're going to have 5, 6 guys that are fun to follow, that are young guys, that are energetic, that people are going to look forward to watching on Sundays.
Yeah, you know what? It's just a bummer. We hate to get rid of the people that we looked up to, and Tiger Woods is one of those people who maybe we looked up to, and he was the guy that everybody could root for because he was such a dominant force in golf. But it's definitely not the same Tiger that we have seen in the past. And you know what? It's hard to watch, but I think that maybe he's done, and maybe it's time for him to give up, what he had and just kind of pass the torch on to some of these younger players.
If you had to put any amount of money that matters to you on the question being, will Tiger Woods ever win another major event?
I'm not betting any money on the fact that he's going to win another major event because I just don't think it's possible. I don't think he's got it in him to win another major event. And for that matter, I don't think people are going to let him win another major event. He's lost that part of his career, and I'm not putting money on that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it's hard to watch a guy like that play the way he's playing right now. And part of Tiger's game was being feared. And I think what you just said right there, being asked that question, your answer to it says it all. We're not willing to put anything on Tiger winning another major, and I think that was a big part of his game. It got into the heads of the guys around him, and it made them play worse. And I don't think that's there anymore. I don't think these young guys are afraid of him. They don't have any reason to be honest with you. He hasn't won a Masters in 10 years, so I think that part of his game's gone. I think you're right. I think he's done. And I think it's just watching him flounder for the next 5-10 years while he tries to figure out what his game is. I think there's a part of Tiger that always thinks he's going to be dominant again.
Well, it's kind of funny that you mentioned that because as I've heard it is that people are actually betting more on Tiger for this major and maybe winning than they are for Rory McIlroy. So people are actually putting money down that Tiger could win this event. And I think that's just stupid.
All right. Let's talk about something that I know that you don't think is stupid at all. And that's baseball's right around the corner, man.
I'm so excited about that. I can't even stand it.
I know that Chris's first sports love is baseball, and it's always his go-to thing. So, I'm gonna leave it up to the expert, man. Give me a couple storylines, and we don't need to go into details because we're still in spring training. We don't know how things are going to unfold. But give me a couple things you're just looking forward to that you're ready to follow. You want to see how stuff develops. Give me a couple things.
Well, there was a few things in the off season that were really interesting to me. Max Scherzer went to the Washington Nationals, which I thought was insane. He's making a crazy amount of money for his new deal, but I think he's a great pitcher, and that's going to make a really tough lineup for hitters to go against. You know what? Back here in Denver, the Rockies, they did a lot this offseason. They changed their whole GM situation. A lot of things went on that, and you know what? It made me pretty happy. You know what? A few things that we can rely on is the Giants and the Dodgers are both going to be very good. And last but not least is I cannot stand the Cardinals, and I hope they do really poorly this year.
Kind of on that line, one of the things I'm excited about, a little homer pick here. I'm obviously anxious to get the Rockies started, but I can't wait to see what the Pirates do this year. You want to talk about who likes the Cardinals in all seriousness.
Well, and it's funny that you mentioned the Pirates because the Pirates have been they've been right there at the cusp the last couple seasons, and you know what? When you've got players like Andrew McCutchen, you know what? they've been doing very well, and you know what? I hope they do a better job this year. They just missed it at the end of last season, so I hope they do really well. And the Cardinals, I don't know why I hate them, but I cannot stand the Cardinals. So anybody who might beat them out, man, they're good by me.
Yeah, the Pirates are going to be really fun. One reason is because, nobody wants to root for the Cardinals. So seeing them knocked out of that division by a team that's had, so much angst. To be a Pirates fan is to know losing, and to see them develop their farm system a little bit and actually get a player like McCutchen to stick around and see what they can do. That's a fun team to watch. I enjoyed watching them at Coors last year when they were here. That was.
Oh yeah, we had a great time, didn't we?
Yeah, that was a great game. We got a little rain on us, but it was fun to watch McCutchen and the Pirates come in and play the Rockies. One of the other things I'm looking forward to this year is to see how that mess in Chicago turns out with the Cubs. I know a lot of guys have them. Their defense is a lot better this year. We're talking about a team that's supposed to be on the up and up. Wrigley Stadium is a mess.
And they've been having problems with that kid that they were just calling the Babe Ruth of spring training, and they've been having, they want to send him down to AAA, and they don't want to put him on the starting roster so they get an extra year on his free agency and all that good stuff. I just think that Chicago is an unfinished product. They have the potential, they just don't have the means to make it as a World Series team. The team that I'm actually looking forward to seeing this year is the San Diego Padres. They've acquired a lot of people during this offseason. They've traded. I'm interested in to see how they're gonna end up. Being that they're in our division and they've been finishing right there at the bottom with the Rockies, and they might end up being a pretty decent team this year. So they might be the ones to watch.
I'm going to go back to something you kind of hit on a little bit that I wanted to get your opinion on, and that's the Cubs using the league's rules to kind of help themselves out down the road. Does this help or hurt baseball? What's your take on that?
Well, it's one of those things that I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that they're doing everything that they can under the loopholes of the law as it was to extend the life of this guy and to save a little money here and there. But you know what? I mean, if the kid's that much of a stud, why not bring him up? Bryce Harper got thrown up right out of the gate because he was an absolute great player. And look what he's done. He's done a lot of good things. Now, yes, he's had his problems and there is a learning curve in there. But sometimes you just got to take a gamble. And as for the Cubs, they've been losing and losing and losing for years and years and years. So what do they really have to lose? If you're going to try and make something of your team, you're going to have to spend a little money. And this kid seems to be legit as far as it goes. And why not bring him up? But on the other side, the Rockies have been dealing with the same problems with Jonathan Gray. Everybody's been talking about him. Is he going to come up? Are they going to put him on the starting rotation? You know what? Why not? If he goes out there and he absolutely blows up, well, then they know. But until you actually give it a try, who knows what's going to happen?
All right, real quick. Like I said, I know it's early, but gut feelings. These aren't lead pipe locks here. Gut feeling, who's in the series this year?
The World Series, that's a tough one because it's a long season, and you never know what's going to happen. Being in my division, I really, the Giants are always there. They've got such an awesome crew, especially pitching-wise when you've got the people that they do. I'm actually thinking that the Giants are going to go pretty far again. They might even make the series. They're just too much of a hang-on team. They've got such good pitching that they're probably going to make it again. So I'm going to pick the Giants on the in the NL. And then as far as the AL's concerned, you know what? The Tigers, they've been big in the last couple of years. Kansas City's probably not going to make another run like they did last year. That was kind of cool. It was fun to see, but you know what? They lost in the end, and I think, with all the things that have been done, it's really hard for me to pick the AL team that's going to go to the end. And for that, I'm going to leave that to you. Let's see what you have for an AL pick.
Looking at the AL, and we all know it's an inferior league compared to the NL. Let's just get that out of the way now. That being said, I like your Giants pick. I would probably throw the Dodgers as someone else in the NL that could probably make that work. But when you look at the AL, I think you're right. It's kind of hard to see things, and we're kind of partial to the NL, so we're not looking at the AL as much. But when you look at the AL, I think one of the fun teams that I could actually get behind, want to see in a series, is maybe someone like the Orioles. Kind of the same thing. A team that's been doing it right, that's trudging along, and they finally got a good young team. Old Buck there on the bench, managing the team out. I'd like to see the Orioles in there.
Well, and then I would too. I mean, I've been a fan ever since Rafael Palmeiro was playing first base for the Orioles, and they haven't been to the World Series for a long time. And this is a team that had Cal Ripken Jr. on it. I mean, they're a great team, but when it comes down to it, I don't think the Orioles have what it takes. I'm probably going to look more into the Tampa Bay side of things. I do like the Tampa Bay Rays. I think they've got a good shot. It'll just be interesting to see. As for the Dodgers, they've got a good system. They're spending a lot of money. They've got a lot of good players. There's so many talented people on their team. I just don't think they have the right recipe yet. They're still working on that that thing that they can't quite get right. But once they do, watch out, because they're going to be a rough team.
All right. One last question on baseball. When are the Angels going to show up? All that money thrown around, all those big names, what are the Angels going to do this year?
Oh, man, the Angels. The Angels have been such a good team. Like I said, they've got the right recipe for winning, They've got all these talented players. They've got a good pitching staff. They're right there in the thing. But once again, they have another recipe for, it seems like almost like a California curse. They've got the one team, the Giants, man. They've just been awesome the last, half a decade. They've just been really, really good. But then you've got the three teams out there who just, they don't seem to have it. Even the Athletics were really good last year. They just could never get it all the way. It was one of those things that kind of baffled you. It's like, these teams are excellent. Why aren't they in it? They just don't have the number one recipe for success. And I think they might get it. The Angels could be a contender for that division. But when it comes down to it, I think in the AL, you either have the Midwest or you've got the East Coast. And that's who's going to be in the World Series, and that's who's going to be the contender.
Yeah, one thing we can agree on, we're excited for baseball to be back, and it's going to be fun seeing how this season unfolds.
And that's for sure. Baseball is just getting started. We've got a lot of games to play, but that's going to be a focus for the next couple months on this podcast. We're going to jump a lot into that baseball, and it is definitely the America's pastime, and it still is, and all these changes have been coming about. Everybody's talking about the length of the game. Everybody's saying this, that, rules. Hey, I'm one of those people who just likes to sit and watch a 3-hour game, no matter what happens. Give me some baseball. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and end up this podcast. We have what we like to call our Homer segment. This is just some of the home team stuff that we have going on. We're from Colorado. We're here in Denver. So we're going to focus on the Colorado teams. We have some really interesting insight into some of the things that are going on, and I'm going to let Josh take it away first, and he's going to go ahead and talk about the Denver Nuggets.
This year was definitely tough for the Nuggets. It's kind of like we were talking about the Broncos earlier. I like to blame the organization on this one. You bring in a coach who doesn't match your style. Everybody knew coming into Denver, running up and down the court was going to be tough on a lot of teams, and that's something that the Nuggets would have an advantage on. They could win, a mass majority of their home games and then let some of those road games go and get in the playoffs that way. George Karl obviously showed that was a recipe for success here on it. So, when we're looking at the Nuggets now, we got an intern coach in Melvin there, and I like the dude. I think he has a great attitude when you listen to him on some of the local stations here, talking to the media. Great attitude. He lets the players play the kind of ball they want to, and all those players are here to run up and down the court. So I'm definitely liking Melvin Hunt, what he's doing here. We'll see if that actually sticks around. I think probably the Kroenkes are looking to make a big splash. I know the name you keep hearing out there is Mike D'Antoni, who's a run and gun coach himself. But the Nuggets got to decide what kind of team they're going to be first, and they can pick a coach based off of that.
I only have 2 questions for you here, and I'm going to let you run with this because I know that basketball is a little more your thing, so I'm going to let you run with this. My 2 questions are, is Melvin Hunt the coach of the Nuggets next year, and do they keep Ty Lawson?
Melvin Hunt will not be the coach next year. I think there's just too much pressure to make a big splash. Fans here in Denver and Colorado have just kind of taken for granted the Nuggets making it to the playoffs year after year after year. So I think the Nuggets, the Kroenkes, are going to want to show that they're going to put a little bit of money. They want to make a big splash, put a big name in there. So I don't think Melvin Hunt's going to get the credit, get the shot he deserves. I think he's probably going to find it with another team, though. There's a lot of teams who want to try to run that up and down the court mentality, and I think he's a guy that's going to either end up with a team with that mentality, or he'll be behind another coach who runs that as an assistant coach and get a shot that way down the road. Ty Lawson, I don't know if Ty Lawson's going to be here next year. I don't know if he should be here. I have kind of a beef with the players on this. They obviously didn't want to play for Brian Shaw, and so they shut it down, and they effectively got him fired. I don't know if you're an owner of a team, if you let that go, if you say, hey, we're going to let the players run the team here. I think getting rid of Ty, even though he's a decent talent, I think getting rid of him sends a message to the league that, hey, we're the Denver Nuggets, we run our team, whoever our next coach is runs our team, not the players.
Yeah, I agree. I think Melvin Hunt's probably not going to be the coach next year, but you know what? He's going to be fine wherever he goes. He'll probably be a head coach in the NBA. And you know what? Ty Lawson, if he comes or if he goes, he just didn't seem like he really wanted to play for this team going forward.
All right. Speaking of teams that we've taken for granted here in Denver, let's talk about the Avs a little bit. Tell me what's going on with that.
Well, the Avs are an interesting story. I mean, they've played very well this season. They've had a lot of injury, but you know what? They've been one of those teams that were just good enough to be at the back. They just good enough to be right at the edge, and that's unfortunate for them, specifically because Patrick Waugh is such a great coach, and he's such a great guy, and he's got a lot of history in the NHL, especially with the Avalanche. The only person, man, you can't argue that the fights that he had with Chris Osgood were just awesome. I mean, talk about a guy with some fire and some passion. But you know what? Given the Avs situation, I mean, you know what? They're only, this far from being, a playoff team, and they've almost got the recipe right. They just need to fight a little bit harder. They've been going back and forth as far as, are they eliminated from the playoffs? Aren't they? They're probably not going to make the playoffs this year. They were, just too little too late. But, I think we have a little bit to look forward to as far as the next season is concerned, because they're, like I said, they're right there. All they need is just a little bit more, and I think they're going to be a great NHL team, and they're probably going to go really far into the playoffs, but there's some teams out there. You look at the Sharks, the Kings, all these teams are playing really, really well, and it just seems like they have this hump that they can't get over, and until they do that, they're just not going to make it. But a little bit of hope. That's all we need, and they'll get there.
You know, speaking of Patrick Waugh, you know, that fire you're talking about, I didn't see that from this team the last couple of weeks coming down the stretch. You know, they didn't take care of business during, you know, the mid part of the season. Coming down the stretch, they didn't take care of business, and yet they still found themselves with a shot into the playoffs. What'd they do with it? They come out, lose the first 2 games. They're not mathematically eliminated yet, but this is done. I mean, they had to come down with the last 9 games, win 7 of them to even have a shot, and then a whole bunch of stuff had to happen in between. It's just disappointing to see these guys not embody that spirit of Patrick Waugh. You know he's sitting there on the bench, just irritated, not seeing the fire from the guys, not showing up when they needed to. That kind of bugs me. I like that he came out the other day and was talking about their draft system and their farm teams, and saying that they draft too many of the same players. They don't have enough big guys. They don't have the fire. I like seeing that from him, and it's just too bad that a young team like this has to suffer this setback and not make it to the playoffs. I mean, it's done for them. There's no shot.
Well, and you know what? I mean, everybody knows that. It's one of those things that we've been going over for the last couple of weeks. You know, like I said, they're not going to make it. They're out of the playoffs. But you know what? As we look back, it's been kind of an unfortunate year for Colorado athletics. And, you know, one of the things that you kind of might segue into is the Broncos. You know, they had such a disappointing end to their season, and they didn't have that fire going into Indianapolis. And, you know, they didn't seem like they were going to make it too far into the postseason, almost like they didn't want to. So what do you see going forward with the Broncos?
The thing that bothered me most that's come out since the Broncos losing is the players in the locker room not believing they could go to New England and win. That's a recipe for losing right there.
And it's also ridiculous.
Yeah, it's nuts when you think about it. Players going out in public saying that type of thing. And there's been debate here locally on whether that was they didn't believe the team as a whole could do it, or if some of these guys meant they didn't believe in Peyton Manning going to New England and leading him to a victory. Either way, it's kind of sickening. At this point, and I know this is a little bit controversial, maybe not, it's time to dismantle this team. No one in the NFL fears this team like they did the first couple of years. They've shown that they're not mentally prepared to come in, win big games, and be that tough team. I think they kind of think it's owed to them to be in the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. I don't feel like this team thinks they need to go out and earn it. I think them being the Denver Broncos, having Peyton Manning, and having every single year these expectations, they just think they're going to walk in, get to the playoffs, and get to the Super Bowl. And to me, that's not how you play the game.
Well, I have 2 questions for you here, and I'll let you answer them. But first question is something that's been burning people in Denver for the last 3 months. What did you think about the third down or fourth down play where Peyton Manning did not run and tried to throw the ball off and it was incomplete? Also, you know, what do you think they need to change in the next season to where they might make it to the Super Bowl?
First off, that play was hard to watch, right? I know Peyton got injured earlier in the season in San Diego, got that thigh bumped a little bit, and the old man doesn't heal like he used to. He had 5 yards to run with 30 yards of open field in front of him. And the guy throws the ball. He throws the ball out of bounds. And I'm sure, I'm sure maybe old Peyton might have made that tight throw on the sideline. But man, 30 yards in front of you. You have 5 yards to go to keep the drive alive, and you throw the football. That bugs me. To be honest with you, if we're talking about next season being successful, I don't know if you can make it successful. I don't know if Peyton, as much as I love him, and as much as I like to talk about him as the greatest of all time, I don't know if he's got what it takes to take this team all the way. You know, quarterback's the most important position on the team, and I think him not making that run shows that he's not willing to give 100%. Here in Denver, the thing you see, the ultimate, show of wanting it and not letting it go is the John Elway helicopter play in the Super Bowl. I mean, that's what Peyton Manning's up against. He's got 30 yards of open field in front of him. He's not willing to do it. So I don't know if you can win with that kind of mentality.
Well, and I agree with you. I think that ultimately, the term that's been thrown around a lot is kicking and screaming, and that team was far from that. But once again, just like Tiger, just like most of these instances that I talk about, I would like to see Peyton come back next year and give the proverbial middle finger to all the people who have been doubting him, and saying he's over and he's done. And I'm kind of hoping that he comes back and he has, maybe the greatest season of his life. But I just don't know that it's going to happen.
All right. So we've been talking about 3 teams that were used to being in the playoffs, used to winning. Let's go to our last homer team. Let's talk about the Rockies. It's a little tough to talk about. Every season we start off with such great hopes. This is a great baseball town. Coors Field is without a doubt the most gorgeous field in the league. Sorry Pittsburgh. Sorry Baltimore. Coors Field is where it's at. What's your hopes for the Rockies this year?
The Rockies, I've been following them since I was a kid. I really like the Rockies. Every year, it's the same old story. They play really good for the first month or two, and then they just tank. We're looking at being mathematically eliminated from the playoffs by, July? I mean, it's such a buzzkill, but I can't help but have a little bit of hope that one of these seasons they're going to get it right again. They're going to figure it out. In 2007, things happened that, what a crazy season that was. We got to see the Rockies go to the World Series. Now, granted, they got swept in the World Series, but you know what? It was such an awesome season because we got to see the fire that these players had. I mean, they had to win 21 out of 22 games just to make it. And you know what? They made it. They had that push to win the game, and that's what kept them going. Now, I'm really hoping that they run into that again. Now, they didn't do that with the best pitching staff in the league. They didn't do that with anything other than the fire that they had as players. And I'm hoping that they come into that. Now, they've made a few good trades this offseason. I really like that they got Kyle Kendrick. Nick Hundley came in. He's maybe not the best defensive catcher that they've ever had, but he's a little bit better than Willeen Rosario. I think he's going to be able to call the games a little better. He's going to give them a little bit more versatility at the catcher position. As far as the starting pitching goes, they've had a few problems already. They don't know who their starters are going to be. It's a good thing that they got rid of Jhoulys Chacin because he was hurt. He wasn't throwing very hard. It was time for him to go. De La Rosa, he's hurt again. You know what? If he comes back, or when he comes back, he's going to be a pivotal, piece to this whole team because he does play very well at Coors Field. He pitches well, and his ERA is really low. It's just kind of one of those things you got to sit back and watch, and I'm just hoping that we watch and we see that this team gets a little better as the season goes on, not starting off really good and coming on late.
All right. So the Rockies, into June, 10 games back from 500. What do you do with the guys? And you know what guys I'm talking about.
You know what? I know you're talking about Tulowitzki. I know you're talking about Cargo. I've been a big fan of Tulowitzki ever since he came up. And I've been a big fan of Cargo ever since he's come up. The problem is these guys aren't staying healthy. They seem like they've got a little bit better attitude this year, that maybe they might come back and they might try and play a full season without getting hurt. But when you've got a track record of coming in and playing maybe half the games because you're hurt, because things happen, well, you know what? They got Daniel Descalso this year. He's doing really, he's a good player. He's going to be able to take some of those games from Tulo. Maybe he's not going to get hurt as much. Cargo, he's just got to stay on it. He's got to be healthy. He's lost 20 pounds over the offseason. He looks like he's coming back strong. But in the grand scheme, I think that you've got to play on your strengths which you've got Nolan Arenado on the corner, you got Tulowitzki in shortstop, you got DJ LeMahieu, and you got Justin Morneau. That is a very solid infield. So take advantage of that. Play on your defense. The pitchers need to be solid. You need to keep these players going. And you know what? I mean, it's a tough division. You got San Francisco and Los Angeles, and possibly, like I said earlier, you got the Padres, who might be really good this year. So if you can just stay with them, through June, July, August, things are going to be okay for the Rockies. The biggest problem that I have is it's tough to be a fan of a team who is, just at the bottom of the league every single year. And I know you Cubs fans, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And hopefully I'm rooting for the Cubs this year. I hope they do a little better. But in the long run, they just need to be more consistent. And it's tough to say, but they're just not that good at consistency.
All right. Then what's your ideal scenario for dealing these guys? I mean, Tulo on the bench is worth trading for that 7-seed BLT sandwich out of the bracket. I mean, what's the cutoff point? When do you give up and when do you get rid of these guys?
Tulo, I bounce back and forth. One day I say trade the guy, he's not worth it. The other day I say keep him because I like the guy. I don't think that they should trade him. I really don't. And I know it's a tough thing to say. I think that if he wants to be a Rocky and he wants to play hard, that he has the ability to. Cargo's the same way. If he wants to play and he wants to be a World Series team again, they can make it happen. So I say keep him. But the problem is if they get injured again, then I go back and forth. I say if they get injured, trade them, get rid of them. They're no good for the team. But as far as it goes, I like the way the team is going this year. I say let's keep the tools that we have and see what happens.
All right, yeah, it definitely should be a lot of fun watching the Rockies get back at it this season. I'm counting on probably not paying attention about mid-June. I'm sure they'll be out of it by then. But, yeah, we'll see what happens. TradeTulo.com is one of my favorite sites, so we'll see what happens this season.
So for me and Josh, that's the end of it. That's the end of this podcast. This is our first episode, so give us a little slack. We definitely like to hear from you, see what we maybe can improve on, what you guys think. We definitely want you to weigh in on our sandwich bracket. We actually thought that was pretty fun. I still think PB&J is going to take the whole thing, but maybe you guys can sway us otherwise. Josh here, he has some final things that he wants to say.
Yeah, guys, it's been real fun being with you today. Like Chris said, first episode, it's been a lot of fun. I look forward to doing a couple more of these. Hopefully we get a little bit better as we keep going. I don't think PB&J can get top, though, on that bracket. I'm sure you guys will let us know what's going on with that.
So for us, like I said, it's our first episode. We're going to be coming at you every week. Once a week, we're going to give you a podcast to listen to. Baseball season's just starting up, so we're going to look forward to that. We're going to keep you updated on that. The NFL draft is coming up. We'll definitely be covering that. Also, basketball is going into the playoffs. We really like to keep an eye on what's going on, see how Steph Curry, see how these people are going to impact their teams, and we really like to see what you guys have coming up, and we'll keep you updated.
Yeah, you guys have a good week. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks.